everybody, and welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I am Dr. Mariane Pinkston, and so happy to have you aboard today. I am going to go a little bit off my usual path and talk about something that is kind of hitting the news and a bit controversial right now because everybody is, I think, almost traumatized in a way by the events that happened Monday night on Monday Night Football. Now, let me give you a disclaimer in the beginning because I am not Damar Hamlin's doctor. I am not involved in his medical care. I was not on the field that night. I, have absolutely no business trying to make any judgments or, talk about any of the medical care or anything in regarding, his the events that happened on Monday night. But because of the response, I think there were so many people. I think ESPN said that was the largest audience that they have ever had in Monday Night Football history. And because I think it affected so many people very deeply, I feel like I would love to, put my 2 cents in and give everybody here in San Antonio and on my podcast and YouTube a little bit of an idea of what might have happened, and it is absolutely, truly speculation. I'm also not a cardiologist, but I do, after 30 years of practice, I do have a lot of, background on taking care of cardiac patients, and we are talking about a 24-year-old man who is very, in shape, very healthy. And to watch what happened on the field and try to put a, medical spin on it is something very interesting. I think everybody is, looking at for different point of views. So we have the COVID and anti-vaccine community and even the pro-vaccine community, looking at the COVID situation. We have the, point of view from his childhood. Was it something congenital? Was it something that, he grew up with and had from birth, and that, it just nothing bad happened to this point? He was very lucky. Maybe it was missed by a medical professional at some point. Or was it the hit? Was it the fact on the field that, there was just a collision that occurred on the chest at the right moment of the heart beating? It's called commotio cordis. And, there's so many different ways to look at this and to see what happened. So when I, visualized his hit on the field, the things that you have to kind of take into account is that he was the one doing the tackling. There was a collision together from Higgins and Hamlin, but he was the one doing the tackling. So it wasn't a square, hard, like, when you think of targeting or, a heavy hit, there wasn't a square, hard hit to the chest. He also has the padding that football players have to wear, and that padding is designed beautifully. And all of these helmets and padding and things that these NFL players wear have been designed for decades through events like this that help to shape and change the way we protect our players and our sportsmen from these dangers. So it's very high tech, and he was very well protected there. And so, not knowing his history, not knowing if he had ever had COVID, not knowing if he had the vaccine or not, those are details that I don't know and truly are none of my business. But, if you play in the fact that there is also a large amount of people who have had COVID that are developing heart arrhythmias or heart conditions and inflammation of the heart, and developing these arrhythmias or strange and unusual beating of the heart. Many people are developing that post-COVID. We are finding that this is becoming more common, and we are identifying COVID as the issue. I was not able to find too much in a way of science on the vaccine causing any arrhythmias, and that the vaccine has been blamed, the anti-vaccine community has been very strong to try to come out immediately with a statement about this, but I don't think we even know if he had a vaccine. So I really want to stay away from that because I do not see the science behind it. And everything has to make sense to me. Everything has to be very scientific based. So I don't see it, but I do see an incredible amount of science on COVID. So those who have had COVID, and I'm going to include myself in this, I developed COVID, and about 2 or 3 weeks after I developed COVID, it was the first time in 3 years that I had it, and I developed COVID. About 3 weeks later, my Apple Watch caught a strange heartbeat or something unusual going on with me, and then I started to feel badly, and I developed atrial fibrillation. So atrial fibrillation comes from somewhere at the top of the heart, and the electricity that goes through the heart gets disrupted, sends an error signal, and the heart begins to beat quickly and very irregular. The swirling of the blood in this irregular heartbeat can develop little clots. These clots can then go to the brain and cause stroke, or somebody can have myocardial infarction or cardiac arrest from it. And so it's a very dangerous condition. It's usually due to people who have had high blood pressure. They're, for a long period of time, maybe decades, maybe untreated, and other situations. But atrial fibrillation is something that usually develops in older people. So for somebody like me, very young, I don't have high blood pressure problems. I'm very healthy, lost a lot of weight years ago, and work out very often. So to be very healthy and to develop an arrhythmia like this was very, very frightening to me, very unusual, and very unheard of. So when you look at somebody like Damar Hamlin, who developed, maybe an arrhythmia, that's what I'm curious as to what might have happened. Again, I'm speculating. If he developed an arrhythmia, then it comes and it goes. It can start and it stops. He may not have felt it at all over maybe the last several months or year. And then it could have occurred when he was being very strenuous and tackling this gentleman. And I think that could have caused a disruption, and he could have had a cardiac arrest from that. I also want to define the difference between myocardial infarction and cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is when some disruption to the heart develops and the heart stops beating. Myocardial infarction is a buildup of cholesterol or cholesterol plaque in the arteries. A piece breaks off, goes down the artery system to a smaller artery, clogs that artery, and the blood flow is disrupted to the heart. Therefore, the heart may die from that or develop damage. Those are two completely different things. What happened to Hamlin is that he had cardiac arrest. So it was either from a disruption in the blood flow or the electricity going through his heart, or some other issue. But they have, since I've read this morning to try to update myself before I did the show, I think they are trying to discuss that maybe it was the commotio cordis, that he had a specific correct hit to the heart that disrupted the electricity and caused the heart to stop. If you look at the hundreds of thousands of players that are out there, from, Pee-wee to, elementary, middle school, to all the YMCAs, to high school, to college, to NFL, there are hundreds of thousands of players out there who are experiencing hits every day. And it only occurs about 10 to 20 a year. This is exceedingly rare. How many times have we witnessed in the, in the NFL, somebody, or college football, somebody dying of cardiac arrest suddenly on the field after a hit? We just don't see it. So as I was taught in medical school, common things occur commonly. And it is not common to have that condition occur with you, or is, the gentleman, he was the aggressor, so to speak. He was doing the tackling. So the force was different. There was no huge force on the chest with all of those pads. I just failed to see where that could be the issue. Now, when it comes to myocarditis, this is another cause of this, potential arrhythmia, or what can happen in the heart, and the heart doesn't beat well, and then, somebody can experience a heart attack from that. The myocarditis comes from a lot of different viral illnesses. It can come from medications. There's a lot of things that can cause inflammation in the body and can cause inflammation in that area of the heart that controls the heartbeat. And so it may not have even been COVID, but COVID is a virus. It could have been another virus. He could have had the flu. He could have had any sort of virus. He could have cold sores, and that is the herpes virus. And so there's many different types of viruses that occur in the body that can cause that kind of damage to the heart. We can't see it. It's not something you can do a CT scan on, or an echo, or a catheterization. It's not something you can see. The only way you know it's there is that the heart starts beating erratically, and sometimes we can't find it. Sometimes we don't feel it. We don't know it's occurring. And again, the only way that I was able to know that it occurred with me was my Apple Watch went off. So now we've got greater technology that can pick up on these things, and that is wonderful. These are things I'll talk about technology in the future and how it's affecting us. But, thank goodness for something like that. And maybe that, and I feel that is probably what happened to Hamlin on the field. And two, the other issue with the commotio cordis is once you receive that hit and the electricity gets disrupted, generally it's very fast. So I fail to see where he could have stood up first, look normal, and then succumb and fall to the ground. So again, I am speculating, and I don't want people to think that that I know what happened in any way, because I don't. But I think because it affected so many people very deeply. I mean, you looked at the commentators, looked at the men on the field as teammates, the other teammates. I felt it. There are people out there who have watched their uncles or aunts or cousins or somebody drop on a court somewhere. And it's very traumatizing, and I think that this has greatly affected our nation this way. On that note, the NFL, I know, is going to have to address all of the concerns of trying to keep players safe. And I think we need to be cautious. We tend to retract very aggressively when something like this happens and try to change, the fate of so many that we may not, have entire control of. We can thicken up the pads. We can change the rules about how hard the hit is and how you tackle and, make all these changes. And the things that we really don't understand is that accidents happen, and there's nothing you can do to prevent all accidents. What I read, and as I studied all of this, the NFL, and what people don't understand, the NFL has a system in place where the entire medical team, the EMTs, and all the personnel on the sideline, the coaches, everybody meets an hour before the game begins while, everybody is getting their popcorn, their sodas, and their beer and going to their seats. These teams are meeting for 1 hour before for an hour to understand the concepts of what would happen and what they should do if an accident like this occurs. They, point out where the AEDs are, the defibrillators, or where the ambulance is going to come from, who's going to make the call, who goes to the field. They do this before every single game. And I applaud the NFL on this, because that planning is exactly what saved Hamlin's life. Those people who ran out to the field and, had their plan in place, they knew what to do, and they did it, and they saved this man's life. And that, my friends, was poetry in motion. I think they are heroes. And I think we haven't talked enough about how the NFL does put this planning into place. And I applaud all of them for getting this done. They did save this man's life. So the planning that goes into it and all, there are things that we just don't know, don't see, don't understand, we're not told, that do occur to keep these these guys safe for what they do and how they take how they put their lives at stake to do what they do. And they're not just there to get paid, they are there to live their dream, and they're there to provide for us too and entertain, and we love it. I'm a big football fan, and I admire these guys for what they do and for the chances that they take. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about it on the other side. I'm going to take a really quick break, but I do want to mention my fantastic sponsor, Harbor Hospice, who has begun with me this year, but I have been working with Harbor Hospice for a very long time as a physician in my clinic. And Anna, who owns the hospice, and Greg, who is the representative, and so many other people there are absolutely doing hospice care and medical care for the right reasons. This is a great team, just like the NFL. It's a great team. So if hospice is something that many people don't understand and don't know about. So we're hoping to this year elevate the knowledge and status of hospice so that people do understand that they can get fantastic care at home. I do want to give you a number in case you already know and would like to reach out to these guys. Is 210-403-9911, and it is harborhospice.com, but it's not spelled like you think. It's HARBOUR hospice.com. So please feel free to reach out for these guys to at least come explain what hospice care is. Just because somebody comes and talks to you about it doesn't mean you have to do it, and they are absolutely fantastic people. I trust them with my patients very, very much. So I also want to let you guys know that not only am I on San Antonio radio, but I also have a podcast. And I'm on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of the podcast platforms. So if you will go to drpbetterlife.com, you can find all of the links to all of my media and all the platforms where you can find me. You can also find out information about me and where I practice. I am here in San Antonio. I do practice in my own practice. I do take some insurance. I also see some cash pay patients for kind of more lengthy, integrative, more difficult patients. And I'm also doing a weight loss program this year and making available to you the new weight loss shots that have actually, they're not new, they've been around for a very long time, and recently did a show on, but I am providing that as well. You can find me at drpbetterlife.com. And again, thank you to Harbor Hospice. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Mariane Pinkston with The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston, talking about a little bit of a controversial topic that occurred on Monday night when Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field in cardiac arrest and was promptly resuscitated by a very tremendous group of people who had plans in mind and resuscitated him, and he made it to the hospital and is now recovering. Looks like he's going to be okay, and I pray so, absolutely, for all of his teammates and his family, and for him especially. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the condition of commotio cordis and the sudden death that occurs in athletes, because the NFL is in the college level too are very sophisticated in their ability to handle a situation like this. They have all the knowledge, they have all the equipment, they have all the specialists out there who can identify quickly and take care of the situation. There are a lot of people though from kind of the high school level down. And on a personal level. So let's say you are out with a family member, playing football, playing basketball, and suddenly one of your family members succumbs to some sort of condition that would cause something like this. Many people do not know what to do. So I wanted to educate you a little bit on what you can do to arm yourself against this. First of all, if you know that a family member has some sort of heart condition, anything, they're on any medication. Maybe they just have high blood pressure. Maybe they have high cholesterol. Look into your family history. Did anybody in the past have sudden death like this? Did they die from heart attacks or strokes? These are things that are good for you to look into and to know. The other thing is, we usually, when you are a medical professional and you are hired by a company somewhere, in many different situations, we have to go through CPR training. And so we can identify somebody and, give them the appropriate care until somebody like 911 arrives. But many people are not trained as such and not required to be trained on that. They can't identify what is occurring at the time. Did they just pass out and fall? Do you just fan them a little bit and hope they wake up? Or do you identify, do they have a pulse? Are they breathing? If you know that somebody in your family has a heart condition, you should consider CPR training. It's very, very easy and inexpensive these days. There's some that are actually just online even. So I'll put something like that up on my website this weekend at drpbetterlife.com. And that way, and it'll be local to San Antonio. I'm sure there's some national, some companies similar nationally. But I'll put that information up because I really think those few minutes that you spend to be able to recognize that you could be at a mall and somebody, collapses suddenly. And it would be wonderful if you would be able to help somebody in need at that time. It is the fact that Damar Hamlin was identified, his situation was identified so quickly, and that they took action so quickly that he is still alive. We'll have to see what happens after he is extubated and awake. And I feel like he'll do very, very well because the attention came to him so quickly. So the CPR training, being able to identify, knowing your family history, knowing your family's personal history, talking about it with your family, doing something similar to what the NFL does is, making a plan. What if something happens? Keeping equipment around, and you can talk to your doctor about what should I do, if something like this happens. Is my dad or my mom susceptible to this? Am I susceptible, to this? And I think that those are ways that you can arm yourself against a situation like this. A lot of times, many athletes, can drop dead on a basketball court, per se, or on the field somewhere. And most of the time, it is because they have a congenital defect in their heart that they were born with. But we are very good as physicians at finding these defects before they start play. You have to have your physical, before you can start track or football at school, things like that. So we're getting better at identifying these issues. But the young people who tend to, collapse on a court somewhere generally have that congenital malformation. Now we have to be a lot more aware because we did have a pandemic of a viral illness that is still out there that can cause these changes to the heart tissue. So if you've had COVID and you have an underlying high-risk condition like high blood pressure, cholesterol, or any sort of congestive heart failure, I'm leaving a few out, having a device like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something like that, there's plenty of technology out there that really doesn't cost a lot of money. So having something like that with you is good. Getting educated. So truly, I think it's all about awareness and prevention. Again, sometimes accidents happen. There are things that we will never, ever be able to control. Thank God this situation is exceedingly rare. And thank God the NFL did have this plan in place, did respond appropriately, and I think we saw the best of what can happen with preparedness and prevention. So they were a great example. So heart topic, this is such a huge topic. There's no way to get it all in within the 25 minutes that I have. But I hope that you've learned something. I hope this helps you and your family somehow. And we definitely are all praying for Damar Hamlin and watching very closely and awaiting his grand return. You can find all of my information at drpbetterlife.com. That is the website where you can find all of the links to all the social media, all of the platforms for the podcasts and YouTube, and more information about the radio show. Also, more information about my sponsors. I do work with Restore Biosciences, a CBD company. I also work with Harbor Hospice, and I thank them for supporting me this year. I hope you guys have a fantastic new year. Go look back through all my shows. I've got a lot of great topics there that I've talked about. Over 80 shows now, a year and a half. Very proud of it. So, guys, thank you. Have a happy new year. We'll see you soon.